Welcome to Hallway Conversations with Matt and Dave. We've both been teaching for quite a while now, but we still have plenty of questions about education. And this podcast is our place for thinking out loud together about topics that we think are important for Christian educators to consider. Welcome to the conversation.
Hello everyone, welcome to Hallway Conversations with Matt and Dave. My name's Matt Beamers.
And I'm Dave Mulder.
And today we are joined by one of our friends in the hallway.
I'm Abby DeGroat.
I'm not sure how it started, but Dave and I often find ourselves standing outside of Abby's door having our hallway conversations. And this will be no surprise to no one who knows us or listens to us. And I think I speak for Dave when I say this. Dave, you can disagree with that. But Abby often adds an element of wisdom and understanding and rationality that we don't quite possess. So Abby, thanks for joining us and not only elevating the quality of this podcast, but of the company. So
for sure.
It's a pleasure to be here.
As always, we want to thank you, our listeners, for allowing the three of us to be here with you. And we want to thank you for joining us in the hallway. Each week, one of us brings a question and we try to think creatively together about it in the context of Christian education. And we hope our conversation might do for you what it's done for the three of us, which is provide space for us to learn and reflect on our practice while encouraging each other in our professional and even our personal life. And if we can make you smile or chuckle once in a while, that's even better. As some of our listeners may know, this is my first year living in the United States as our family recently moved from Canada. Shout out to all our friends up north. Woo-hoo. I recently saw many of my education friends from Canada post on their Instagram, Twitter, and other social media feeds that it was spring break where I used to live. Now, besides missing spring break, and there's all kinds of reasons the three of us are missing spring break.
So true.
It was
Valid reasons.
Valid reasons. Very valid. It was interesting to step outside of myself and observe how I reacted to those images. And the primary emotion I felt was loss. And not at losing spring break, although that was probably part of it, but because, and I don't know why I didn't think too much about this before, it made me realize, looking at those images, made me realize that for all intents and purposes, it was about a year ago that face-to-face learning for most people ended. I know that's true for you, Dave, and for Abby, and for me, and for our students. So in that context, here's my question for you two. It's a bit of a two-parter. If you think about the past year, what are some initial reflections maybe that you're having now as you look back at this year? Just like how was it and how might you look back at this year even now or even in 5 years from now or 10 years? And the second part is there's a lot of talk about what school will look like post-COVID. Then Lord willing, we get there soon. And my question about that is, what shouldn't return to normal when that happens? Or maybe another way is, what have we learned that we should take with us as we move forward? Because people have a lot of pretty strong opinions about what should change and what shouldn't change. And so I'm just wondering maybe to reflect on that as educators and even as parents. So maybe let's start by just saying, like, Dave, how do you look back at this past year, and maybe how will you look at it a few years from now?
It's so interesting. I was reflecting a lot about this just recently because it was almost a year ago that we went on hiatus, right? And the lesson that I was teaching in my science methods class just the end of last week, it was the equivalent last lesson before we went on. And we didn't come back after spring break.
Right.
And I was so cavalier to my students, like I often do on our last class meeting after spring break. I'm like, make good choices. See you later, and like send them out. And if I had known that was the last time I'd be in the same room with those students, I would have said a better goodbye. I would have said things and done things differently. And I try to live a life with few regrets, but like looking back, I regret that. And I guess that's one of the things that I'm just realizing, like I can't take for granted any meeting that I have with students. I don't know. Abby, how about you?
Yeah, I had the same reaction. I taught a lesson today that was the first one I taught virtually last year, right? Yeah. Because it was the start of our module after spring break when we had that week, and then we transitioned, and then this was the first one I did. And I actually, in the PowerPoint, I had 2 videos of my kids that I used to illustrate a point to my students. I did a little interview with both Harper and Reese, 4th grade and 2nd grade, Last year they were first and third, and we were in my office and we had a mural, like we painted. Do you remember how everybody like painted their front windows last year?
Yeah.
And like crosses or the stained glass,
Right.
and I could see it behind them, and I almost got like a weird
Wow.
feeling flashback of that time and how much time we were spending together and what that looked like, and structuring my day teaching online with their day learning at home 24 hours a day.
It's a lot of together time.
And a preschooler, right? A toddler. Yeah.
Hey, thanks for that. If you think about the past year, maybe, and I'm not asking you to bare your soul here, but what have you sort of learned about yourself, maybe individually or even professionally, like as you look back what have you learned about yourself or about teaching or students, or I don't know, Abby, does something come to mind there?
I think I took for granted, kind of similar to what Dave was saying, the interaction and the feedback I get from teaching students in person and the energy that I draw from them, right? So I can plan an online lesson. The pedagogy, is a little bit different, but you still have the learning target, you still have your activities, you still have the task and the feedback and the assessment. So, I mean, it looks different, but it's the same process. But the energy that I gained from students was something that I really, really missed and learned that I really value.
Did that surprise you, Abby?
It did a little bit.
Yeah.
I missed it so much.
Interesting. How about for you, Dave? Like, how do you look back, or what did you learn?
So I'll answer that question two ways. I want to talk personally and professionally, I think. So personally, for several years now, I have described myself as an introvert, and I realize that is really true for me. I always joke, I'm good with the crowd, but like that is draining for me. And like being in a classroom with students, I love it, but it does tire me out, and it's good for me to have downtime. And what I discovered, interestingly, having so much time just with me and my family in the past year, I crave social interaction in a way that I haven't really before, right? And I still would never characterize myself really as an extrovert, but maybe I'm realizing I'm an extroverted introvert, right? Like I need that kind of social interaction with other people. And then, professionally, I really like teaching online. About half my teaching load is online, and I love it. I love that. But the balance for me of doing really good online instruction, okay, I can do that. What we were doing last year was not online instruction. It was emergency remote teaching, and we should not call it online teaching.
Interesting.
That's my professional judgment, being in the ed tech field, right? But it is qualitatively different. When I was kind of that constant scramble, just trying to adapt things that I would have done for a face-to-face to make them online, and I don't like that. Like I like teaching online, but I got to be able to plan for an online course, and it just
from the beginning.
From the beginning,
yes,
because it is different that way.
Agreed.
Hey, we've been involved. All three of us have been involved in Christian education all of our lives. We've been involved in Christian day schools. Now we're involved in Christian post-secondary education. We've experienced it as students, and we've talked with the three of us that as much as we love it, we're not naive that it's a perfect system. That they're like anything, it is broken, in need of redemption. When you think about some of the shifts in education that were forced upon us, we literally had no choice. I know I can find myself sometimes longing for the way it used to be, and I'm not sure if I long as much for school as I knew it, as much as just maybe a sense of freedom of things that we took for granted. So I have to discern that myself. But if you think about some of the things that we were forced to stop, or maybe forced to begin, that have sort of become part of our practice, or that are right now no longer part of our practice, what shouldn't we go back to when we return? And I'm using quotes here, of course, when we return to normal.
Yeah, whatever normal.
Whatever normal is, like what shouldn't be, what shouldn't return when that happens.
One thing I've been thinking about and actually had a conversation about with some folks is the 8-period high school day,
Oh, yeah.
right? So is it really the best thing for students to switch and do that cognitive switching 8 different times between 8 different subjects throughout the day at 45-minute chunks? How much time do they lose in the passing? And why was it created in the first place? And does that still serve what we're trying to do?
Right.
So I think COVID provided an opportunity to break that open a little bit and see that this is not a concrete structure that is immovable.
Interesting when you describe that. So one of my grad students, I think you know Adrian too. And he has described what they've done at his school, that they've really shifted. The students basically do two courses. They have a morning class and an afternoon class, and that's just the way that they've been moving forward. And I think that feels like a really big block of time. But then, so you really only have 2 courses every quarter of the school year. Boy, like that would really shift some of what is possible in some situations too. And I know there's some pushback, right? Like I think students should write every day, students should do some math every day. Okay, like I can see arguments for that. But on the flip side, I wonder if that would allow for getting deeper into a topic because you've got bigger chunks of time.
But it also makes me like, you had earlier this week used the phrase, like every class we should write a little, we should read a little, we should like, and you just referenced that. But I also wonder, like in using Adrian's example, let's say, and I know people would be like, how could you ever do that? Like I know people who would move from 8 periods a day to 7 would wonder, how could you ever do that? But even in that sense, it makes me wonder, like, would it force us to think more interdisciplinary? Like, like, how do I integrate this? And how might that enrich the experience?
Because I do think students should write in math.
Oh, yes. Right.
Right? Yes.
Like literacy cuts across the whole curriculum, right?
In fact, I teach a course.
Totally.
That
Talk
is
about
based
that.
on that premise.
So you talked about, it's making us or forcing us to rethink scheduling, which is a bit of a holy grail in some schools, and I get that. I don't say that as I say that as someone who probably thinks and has looked at it that way as well, right? And but how about for you, Dave? Is there something that you think, that as we through COVID, that shouldn't return to normal when things supposedly return to normal?
Supposedly, So I've been thinking a lot about alignment in my curriculum, and this goes back to one of our very first episodes is about learning targets, right? And this is something that I found I had to do so intentionally when I was planning on the fly in the spring, way last spring, and it carried through the fall semester too, really. So I need to be really clear about what the target for learning is, but then how can I just be grace-filled in allowing multiple paths to meet that target? And I mean, there's a downside to that as a teacher for me, because that means I might have students doing multiple different things, right? And that's hard, right? That's a hard mind shift for a lot of us, and I'll point the finger at myself as I say that. But students have responded so well to that when they had multiple ways to say, like, so show me that you learned this thing, right? And I wonder if there's ways that we can capture. I mean, that's not a new idea. I think back, I was at a conference years and years ago, and I got to hear Carol Ann Tomlinson, the guru of differentiated instruction, right? I got to hear her present, and she made it sound like the most reasonable thing. Like, why would you not do this, right? And she's right about that, but it is a mind shift in order to embrace that, I think.
Yeah, reminds me of, we do work with universal design for learning a little bit in one of my courses. So thinking about multiple pathways, right, to the same target, and how taking that route is beneficial not only for students that need some of those accommodations or some of those different assignments, but really for everyone to have that choice and that agency and the freedom to express their learning in the way that works best for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think for, I want to say teachers and students, and I want to frame this the right way. So if I'm not using the right language, you guys can correct me here. that it made some of us realize that it increased our capacity, that it increased our, like I can do this, or in some maybe a different way is like our resiliency, our I'm just thinking of like what even some of our kids can now do online that maybe we were like, I had no idea that they could do that, and not just do it, but do it well. But I even wonder about that for some teachers. Like, I can think of some faculty that I worked with. For sure, we all went into this with fear and trepidation.
Yeah.
And they are great classroom teachers, and I can remember thinking, oh, like, this is going to be hard for all of us, and they crushed it. Like, it was unbelievable. Like, I think some of them in a good way surprised themselves. Like, it was, and I wonder about that for students. And that's not to discount how hard it was also for some, like, I'm not, like, everybody, we all went into this, and it was different. It was a different experience for all of us. I'm just wondering about, hey, how do we give opportunities even for students to continue to be resilient and grow and maybe surprise them. So I don't know, Abby, you have young children. Maybe how would a parent perspective
this was
on that?
a thing for us. My oldest, we really had to work on that self-efficacy, and I can do this, right? And her self-talk even at home. And I was, she had a dear third grade teacher, and I was just not her. Right?
With all due respect.
With all due respect, my secondary English education degree did not come in handy when I was teaching Harper last year. And so it was a lot of, but we did by the end get to a point where she could talk herself through some of the tasks that she was struggling with at first, or where she would get discouraged, and then we had some lines and we had to work on some of that talk, and she could talk herself through it by the end without having a meltdown. And we were quarantined for COVID this fall. I had it, my kids didn't get it, but they were home with me for a long period of time again. And the things that I don't think I helped her at all.
Wow.
Because she had a teacher who knew how to put everything through Google Classroom. It was just their mode of being, and videos, and Harper could learn it, and she would do her tasks, and I could focus on my work and helping her sister and her little brother, and so there was a lot of that growth. She's 10, right? And
you
could
saw
do that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, there's kind of a hill to get over for students, because I think the way we have traditionally done school, and I'll point the finger at myself as that teacher, like, I need to guide and control and manage this whole situation somehow, right?
We do it to them instead of with them.
Right. Well said. And for me too, as a parent, as a teacher, that's been kind of a mind shift to say, come on, these kids can do this stuff, right? Why am I trying to spoon feed them, right? No, give them a challenging task and support them to get there.
And also, like, one of the things that I had that I'm keeping as, thinking through this is getting rid of unnecessary busy work, right? Getting to those tasks. So I threw out like a whole bunch of stuff that I came to realize was just really not necessary. And so reevaluating that, and what can they do in their daily work that leads to something substantial, instead of just doing an assignment to do an assignment.
Right? How do you keep the main thing thing, right? And I think for me, it's helped me rethink what does learning even look like? Like, how do you demonstrate your learning? I remember seeing my daughter those first few months. One of the things, and maybe this happens in most classes, but I just was really thankful for the intentionality around check-in questions. Like this idea of like, how are you doing, and giving people space, and for some reason, and I know I try to use them in the class I teach now, but as soon as I ask it, I'm already looking at the clock. Like, I gotta get to, what I define as, important, and then all of a sudden realizing if I think about that, boy, that was one of the most important hours of her day, was this check-in for herself, to hear how the others were doing, kind of in this unknown territory. So I think a lot of teachers do check-in questions, but I hope that's one thing that we actually take with us as like this good practice of checking in. And again, I don't say this as a criticism of teachers, because this is a learning for me too, but it really clarified. I was a principal a year ago when this all happened, and it really helped me understand the question of what's best for students. Like, I think I've tried to be, like, hey, what's best for kids, and let's make decisions on that, and try to frame it that way. But I feel like COVID really forced us to really like what's best for kids. Even what you're talking about, busy work, right? Whether it's in their learning, emotionally, and I hope we continue to really not just ask that question, but to really have the courage to answer that. Like, this goes back even to an 8-period day. Right. Maybe that is what's best for kids, and I'm not saying it's not like, but to have an answer to that question,
and for there to be a reason, and not just because it's what we have always done.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, it's 100 years of grand tradition, right? Well, yeah, we should ask those questions.
Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking about that in terms even of teacher work, right? Like what should be normal working hours for me as a teacher? And that's something I've had to really try to reset for myself, because especially when we were teaching emergency remote teaching last spring, like there was always something I could be doing.
Right.
And so what should be the boundary for me, right? Like if I've put in 8 hours today, should I be able to say, and I'm done and I'm not going to check my email again? I think that's probably what I should do. I have a really hard time with that personally, because I know there's always more I can do, and I feel like I should, putting air quotes on it, I should be doing all this stuff.
Right.
Hey, is there something, as you think about, we're talking about, hey, what shouldn't we take with us, or here's what we've been forced upon us, what we've grown because of the past year. Are there things that we lost that should return? So think about, instead of, we can be done with some of these things, or at least wrestle with the why behind it.
Yeah.
Are there things that you feel like we've lost a few things, and there will be something really good for us to get some of those things back, and maybe the answer is nothing, but I'm just wondering if something, when things get back to normal, that you'd say, hey, we've missed a bit of this, and it will be good, whether all or in part, for some of these things to return, whether in the learning or even outside of the classroom.
I think it goes back to what I missed, right? Just that in-person energy you draw from each other. I know for my own children, even recess and that play and that social interaction that is so vital to them and their development. And I think that's true all the way up through college students.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
they need that. I think they need to see each other's faces. I think I need to see their faces. I hope that masks go away eventually, so I can do that, so they can read each other. We can mix groups, right? Instead of everyone sitting in their same spot. I think I miss that.
No, that's good.
One of the things I think that I would say in response to that, being able to have students working in groups, and that's something I so took for granted, I think, before COVID. That, I can just assign 2 students to talk about this, or one of the moves I like is walkie-talkie, right? I'll give them something to talk about, and I'll go for a walk for 3 minutes, and then you're going to come back and you're going to share out what you do. I don't feel right using some of those kinds of moves in the age of COVID. Even one of the classrooms I teach in this semester, they put twice as many tables in the room, so that every student gets their own table. Well, that sounds great in theory, but it's like all elbows in there, just trying for me to move around the room, and that's something that's got to go away, right? Like, I want the right number of tables in a room again, so I can have a traffic pattern for me to move around. I want to be able to come up close beside my students again. I hope that that's something we'll come back to, right? I feel like I always have to kind of keep them with a 10-foot pole away from me, and I've always got to have my face shield on. I don't want that. I think that's not how we were created to function as human beings.
No, I sometimes think about, like, as we reimagine, and I think COVID has helped us reimagine our practices and our protocols, I think, and I hope that doesn't stop, but I certainly miss that sense of freedom in a classroom for everybody, right? That it's, after 1 year, I am still find myself thinking, it's always in the back of my head. Like, even things like you talk about, like about collaboration and seating, it's like, oh, can I do this? What? So those organic moments are always tainted in the back by, like, is this okay? Like, to send them for a walk, to turn to an elbow partner. all of those things, like I'm putting my mask on, off, putting a whatever it is, like just all these things that
Am
are
I behind my
part of it.
podium? Is there a shield in front of me?
Right.
All of that. And so I just, and in saying that, I know that for some people, school doesn't feel like a free place. And I think maybe one of the things that maybe that hopefully we take with us is, hey, maybe for some students on certain days, wherever they're at, for whatever reason, physically, emotionally, academically, that learning from home is okay for that day, and that we don't devalue it. Because as much as I love seeing people face to face and it energizes me, I think before COVID, I probably thought, like online face to face is like, it's superior, right? Or you're gonna learn
Right.
more, you're gonna learn better, and realizing that actually for some students the opposite might be true.
Right.
Like that freedom that I'm talking about, that for some students they may experience that not being in the classroom. And so I don't have an answer for that, but just are we open to that for some kids this might actually be more helpful to not be there.
And I love that thought. The only caveat I'd put on it is then we have to resource teachers well to be able to do that well.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's been the burden that so many teachers have had to bear, to try to split yourself so you're teaching students face to face and online. That is not a great experience.
Absolutely,
right?
Dave, and I agree 100% with that. Like, I'm in no way suggesting, hey, 50% on like whatever.
Right.
Totally. And hey, good luck with that. Like, I have one student on Zoom this morning, and I was rattled. Like, I was totally rattled by it. Right? It's like,
Totally.
I want to meet their needs. I want to meet the classroom needs. No, totally. And so maybe that's part of what we need to reimagine. What does it mean?
Well?
How do we do this? Well, if we think this is what's best for kids,
right.
then we need to do that. All right, folks. I just want to say thanks. Thanks for today, Abby. Thanks for joining us. It's the first time. I know it will not be the last.
That's
time.
right.
We're gonna get inundated with emails saying now, like, hey, like, can one of you not show up and just bring Abby on every week?
Exactly
also.
Right.
Those
That's
who don't
not
know,
going to happen.
Those who don't know, Abby loves it when we talk like this about her. So
it's my favorite thing.
Totally. Friends, we know that your time is valuable, and we want to thank you for joining us today in the hallway. While we have a long list of topics we want to talk about, and trust me, it is a long list, we want to know what hallway conversations you would like to hear. So if you have ideas or questions or feedback for us, or simply want to share what you're talking about in your hallway, please email us at hallwayconvospod@gmail.com, hallwayconvospod@gmail.com. And on behalf of Abby and Dave, we just want to say thanks to each of you for the good, God-delighting work you're doing in your schools and communities. And as you go into this week, I just want to say on behalf of the three of us, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace, and give you peace, and give you peace. Amen. Have a good week, everyone.
This podcast was quite literally dreamed up by Matt and Dave during one of their hallway conversations. Our music was created by Ethan Mulder. Hallway Conversations is an independent podcast created and produced by Dave Mulder and Matt Beamers. Thanks for listening.